afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back. Now, we are starting our afternoon. I know it's always a bit difficult to get away from the break and from the networking, but we do have quite a few of you following us online already. So we're going to plow ahead and hopefully we'll be joined by more people here as we go. We have had already a pretty good taste this morning of what has already happened, what has already been done in terms of research and in terms of bringing this research to the market. We'll now look a little more in depth into very specific examples of how EIC Pathfinder actually does take projects from research to the game-changing innovations that make a difference on the market. Now, the EIC Pathfinder plays an absolutely crucial role in the European innovation ecosystem. It has inherited the rich achievements of the former program, The Future of Emerging Technologies, and now the EIC Pathfinder helps fund very high-risk research within the EIC, within the European Innovation Council. To discuss this journey from one end to the other, I'm delighted to welcome three panelists this afternoon. And we have Yolanda Casas, who is the Chief Operation Officer from Neuroelectrics. Yolanda, good afternoon. You are online. Yolanda is replacing Anna Maiques, who unfortunately had a flight delay and couldn't join us. Yolanda, good afternoon. Yes, I see you on my screen. We have with us on stage Dr. Silvia Scaglione. Silvia is the prize winner for the Innovation Radar Prize. She's the coordinator of a B2B project funded by the Pathfinder. She's also a permanent researcher at the Italian National Research Council, and she's the head of the Laboratory of Tissue Engineering in Genoa. Good afternoon, Silvia. And then finally joining us online also is Dr. Itedale Namro Redwan, who's the Chief Scientific Officer and Director of BioInc and Tissue Engineering Research and Development at s.r.l. Good afternoon to all three of you. You are all three very good examples of the whole path that we've been talking about and of the role that the EIC Pathfinder can play. So I'd like to, first of all, ask each of you how the Pathfinder fits into your experience as researchers and as developers. And maybe for that, I'll start with you, Silvia, since you're right next to me.
Yes, thanks. Well, Pathfinder fits very well in my experience because, as you told, I come from academia, but I'm also chief scientist of a startup. And in the Pathfinder, we have found the perfect funding opportunity to go on in a high-risk, collaborative, interdisciplinary project. So in this sense, when you have different actors that have to work together for a high-risk breakthrough technology, in our case, we want to generate an organ-on-chip technology for studying the cancer progression and for testing novel personalized medicine. We have on the table physicians, engineering, biologists, and we have also excellent ERC winners, but also start-upper in order to go on also in the exploitation of the technology. So Pathfinder, in my opinion, represents the perfect opportunity for innovators and scientists and start-upper to go on in our mission.
And can I now turn to Yolanda? Yolanda,
Hello?
Looking at my screen. Hopefully you should appear in a minute. There you are. Yolanda, same question applies to you, really. How did the Pathfinder fit into your overall experience in your company?
Mm-hmm. First of all, thank you for having us. And I think that thanks to the European Innovation Council, actually it's at the very beginning, at the very birth of Neuroelectrics, we have a FET project, which is, as everyone knows, the precursor of the Pathfinder program of the EIC. And that was a project about like how to have the understanding of the brain, its diseases, and how to treat them. And it was an innovation project that was a cooperation with many innovation centers and in a company called s.r.l, which is our mother company. But very soon, there was the realization that actually that could be a technology that could be transferred into a company, and that was how Neuroelectrics was created as a spin-off of s.r.l. And today at Neuroelectrics, we are developing a technology to neuromodulate the brain activity, and that allows to create personalized therapies to treat neurological and psychiatric conditions and get these treatments to people who don't have a proper handling of their diseases and are suffering all over the world. So this is a very good example of how something that was born as a scientific and technological project, but with a lot of risk that needed this validation, has now become a company who has successfully closed an investment round, and that is conducting clinical trials in the US to bring these technologies as therapies to all these people in need.
Thank you. So, Itedale, can we really say that this EU funding changed your company?
Well, I have to say that the answer is yes. So I'm very, very fortunate to have been part of s.r.l's journey for 4 years now. And when I started, we were 20 people, very passionate about technology that was going to change the life science industry and the way we answer questions related to the future of health, but also the future of humanity. Today, s.r.l is a company that is around 2,000 people, and it's only 4 years later. And s.r.l changed its name and gave birth to a new company called s.r.l Inc., where I'm still a part of. So s.r.l, our focus is to really apply bioprinting to answer scientific questions. And just a few years ago, we were approached by a professor, a medical doctor, Alessandra Balduini, in the project of silk fusion in collaboration with many scientists, but of course, Pavia as leaders. And we got the possibility to collaborate in this amazing project where the goal is to actually bioprint blood factories. So basically, blood producing or platelet producing bioprinted constructs, and then to use these constructs for transfusion, but also for drug screening purposes. And I think not only did we get funding for this very high risk and challenging project, but we actually got the opportunity to contribute to a very, very important question, which, the lack of blood for transfusion. So I would say this is definitely has had a great impact, and with the support of the European grants and a few of them that we've got, including the FET and so on, we've gotten a pilot project also. We've definitely excelled our innovation and been more successful to invest in high risk projects that maybe someone else would have not invested in.
Thank you. Now, I'd like to invite everybody, whether here in the room or people online, to do send already questions for our speakers so that we can have a little interactive exchange towards the end of our session. And of course, I invite our speakers as well to reach out to each other or let me know if they would like to comment on what somebody else has said. I know it's not easy to organize a dialogue between some people online and some people on stage, but it's feasible. So you hear us, we hear you. That's the main thing. So please don't hesitate also. Just raise your hand for our friends online if you would like to comment on something, for instance, that Silvia has said or is going to say. Now, to continue on our questions, would you say that the EIC Pathfinder actually is just the right tool to foster interdisciplinary and intersectoral collaboration between, on the one hand, leading research teams from one place and leading research teams from another? Is that interconnection really essential? Maybe I'd like to start with Yolanda this time.
Mm-hmm. Yes, actually, I don't want to be wrong about this, but I think it was 7 or 8 different organizations, institutions that were at the beginning part of this HIVE project, the FET project that gave birth to Neuroelectrics later on. So I think that we are a clear example of how we are, we used these collaboration between different institutions, and it was like, I think that even the same amount or almost of different countries as well around Europe. So I think that definitely this helps, and it's a way to put in contact researchers and innovators like that are working in different institutions in different countries.
Itedale, what about from your end? How does that connection between researchers work?
It's essential, and I think the focus or the example I can give is, if you look at any individual, it's impossible to clap with one hand. You need 2 hands, and maybe you need a full team of scientists and brilliant minds together to solve different or difficult questions related to science and academia. I think in industry, there is just a certain amount of research that we can do that is not commercially linked, since companies usually needs to be self-sustainable, and of course they need to survive the investments that are done in R&D. While I think in academia, scientists really dedicate their career and their life towards innovations. And it's only by us collaborating where, for example, as an industry company, we know that we are working on the right things that are actually interesting for the scientists, but also we function as a link to bring those new findings to the industry and maybe sharing with other users in the world. So I think it's definitely a win-win, and I don't think that it's possible to put the entire responsibility on one research group or one research team. We all have the responsibility to collaborate together, and that will help us move faster.
Now, Silvia, collaboration between leading research teams from your end as well?
Yeah, I fully agree with the last comments, and in my opinion, it's important, it's critical, especially in some specific challenges like the medical research, the interdisciplinary collaboration, but also the intersectoral collaboration, because we have to go on the temptation to write amazing scientific papers and to advance the knowledge of basic research. We have to go on, and only the presence of the startups within these collaborative projects have the head and the potential to design the technology, the prototypes with the market in mind since the beginning, because the direction also in the Pathfinder instruments has to be at the end the exploitation. So in my opinion, this is another important point.
Yes, so absolutely essential indeed. And to all of you, and maybe this time I'll start with Itedale, What would your advice be to researchers in order to bring innovation to the market? I mean, clearly it's something that we've been talking about since this morning. We saw it with some of our award winners. We're seeing it in all the conversations that have been taking place on this stage. What would your advice be in order to concretize innovation into a tangible market good or service?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the first important, I wouldn't say advice, but maybe indication I could give those scientists is please patent your findings, patent your ideas, and protect your innovations. This is very, very important. I know that in academia, we are very interested in publishing our papers, and it is a huge part of our job. We should do that, but let's make sure the innovation is protected, because if everyone has access to the technology and you're not protecting it, then it will be very difficult to have commercial benefit from your findings. I think, second of all, I know that universities and academic institutions, they have business development offices. Do reach out to them and tell them that I have a finding that I think can be great value to the industry. If you don't have that, I mean, reach out to the companies alone, and I promise you, if your innovation is interesting, which I'm certainly sure it is, there will be people interested there, because it's through partnerships and collaborations we can get it out there. Or also, I mean, it's worth taking risks and going for spin-offs. It is worth it if your innovation and your idea is huge enough. And luckily we have grants such as the Pathfinder to support brave, innovative ideas.
Thank you. So very interesting pieces of advice indeed. And I hope there are people in the audience, whether online or here, taking notes because it's going to be useful to many people. What about you, Silvia? What would your piece of advice be?
The first advice is to create the proper team that create the consortium at the end. A proper team means the most excellent innovators and scientists in Europe, each one for the specific topic that represent the ingredient, the bricks of the overall project. And the second one is to focus since the beginning on the impact of the technology. That can be, of course, a market-oriented impact, but also a societal impact. So, for instance, probably also selling may share this common impact. In our case, our impact is also to change the paradigm of the drug testing, and so also to reduce the animal usage in this drug development. And so, but in many cases, there are other type of societal impact. So this is another suggestion I want to leave.
Yolanda, what would you advise?
Yes, I would be aligned with what my colleagues have said before. Like, really, patenting is very important. I have seen like many good ideas that get it hard to get to the market in the end, to the society, to be transformed into a product, because even the same researchers publish prior art that make it very difficult to patent later. So it's very important to have a very good IP strategy right from the beginning of a new idea. So even before it takes the full shape and it's ready for the next step. So that's very important. I think that researchers should be advised about that and should get trained somehow about IP protection and IP strategies. So I think that's very good advice. And what I would also say is that it feels sometimes in academia that there is a great divide between doing something for science and doing something for business, like as if it were two different things that have nothing to do with each other. And even a little bit the feeling for scientists that if they do something for business, they are betraying like the purpose of science or something like that. And what I would like to say is that we need to look at the business feasibility or viability of a project as a way to make it happen in the real world, in the society, of having a real impact. And I think that at the heart of every scientist, there's the will to do something good for society, to do something good for humanity, and that this is a way to make it happen, like create a project that can be self-sustained as a business. So I would encourage also researchers to think in this way about businesses, that this is a vehicle to transfer their findings into something good for society.
Thank you. We have received a couple of questions already, and please keep sending them. We have a question which is related to the biotech sector, so maybe you would like to take this one, Silvia. The 2021 Pathfinder focused also on genetic therapies. And will the 2022 Pathfinder have the same interest in investing in biotech startups with a focus on genetic therapies? Would you have any idea about that?
Well, in the biotech field, the issue is that the funding is critical because the time of the return on investment is long. So for this reason, EIC is doing a great work to support this innovation and to help these ideas, because in many cases the VC do not have time to come back with the return on investment in this type of innovations. And this specific field is one example. So there are a huge a number of breakthrough ideas that may create new markets and new life science changing. This is for sure will happen. But before reaching that goal, we have to wait a long time, long time. And in many cases, EIC work is the unique work that has the capacity to pick up this novelty, to found this, and to allow that these dreams become reality. Because if you consider, for instance, the smartphone, at the beginning it was just a mobile phone, but now the smartphone is used also as MP3 player, GPS positioning, camera photo, agenda, calculator, so different markets, a huge TAM, but at the beginning the smartphone was just a mobile phone. And so it's important also, especially in the biotech, to keep in mind this long term to reach the market.
Mm-hmm. Would any of our two speakers online like to comment on this biotech question? Itedale, Yolanda? No? That's okay. We'll continue. We have more questions. So, and that's one for all three of you, actually. What's the next step for your companies after Pathfinder? I mean, we've talked about the fact that we needed to bring science and innovation to the market. Okay, that's one thing. But in terms of the Pathfinder in your own organizations and companies, what are you looking at for the coming years? Are you looking at raising equity? Are you trying to get transition or accelerator support? What are you aiming to do? Maybe I can start with Yolanda on this one.
Yes, thank you very much. So we recently closed a round of funding that's funding actually our clinical trial activity in the US. This was very much needed. The Pathfinder was like the first push that gave birth to the technology and was at the root of the founding of the company. But now we are in a process of getting these indications, this technology validated for clinical use, and we are aiming at closing another round of funding in 1 or 2 years. So this is something that's it's a round of after another, like as you get to your milestones as a company that you prove and create more assets, more value for your project, it's closer to the market, you need to continue with the following funding. And I think that this is a possibility as well to take into consideration these projects from the EIC. I believe that this is one of the things that needed to be done as the companies go from the startup phase to the scale-up phase, and they need like larger amounts in their rounds to continue to be successful in their goals.
Thank you. What about you, Silvia? Next steps?
We are doing different strategies. So we have the transition to innovation instruments in mind. I mean, we have already applied, to be honest, and then we have already some dialogue open with to VC, and we have also the privilege that we have already reached the market. And so we have also revenues and some recurrent revenues. So we are going on in parallel to optimize and accelerate as much as possible.
Yeah, so acceleration, really.
Yeah.
Itedale.
Yeah. No, I think, as Yolanda said, I mean, of course, having the investor rounds and finding the resources to continue our amazing work is, of course, part of our it's part of our plan as well. But I think what has been most successful and most essential to us has also been to get access to the collaborations that are empowered by the European grants that are supporting consortiums comprising big groups with various and diverse knowledge. And I think that will continue. And I think it is still part of my major strategy to help us. Because in the end, we as a company, we are a technology provider. We provide the technology, the bioprinting, the bioinks, but it's really through the work with these consortiums where we can actually bring the technology to use in important applications. So I think it will continue to be part of being part of larger consortiums. For example, we have a few G8, which is also a project related to bone, Triangle related to tendon, and so on and so forth. I think that's the success of that I see, where we are actually working with in real life problems and getting support to work with in real life problems with great collaborators brought together with different specialities.
Thank you, Dedali. And actually, I'll stay with you because I think that building on what you just said, I'd like to ask you, looking at the stage where you're at now, would you apply again to Pathfinder? And if so, why? Starting from where you are now.
Yeah, from where I am now, I think one of the reasons why we are where we are now are thanks to, of course, the great support we receive. And I would say definitely we would apply again. It's also very encouraging when you are working on an innovative project. It's encouraging to get it, first of all, reviewed by experts in the industry and evaluated and compared to other projects and applications. Once a grant is granted, you get empowered and really want to focus your thoughts and ideas into a tangible solution. And I think having the deliverables and the milestones to achieve is it's a very good tool to guarantee that projects proceed and move forward compared to not having a timeline to follow. When you have grants, for example, in some instances, you can work on the same research topic for years. But here it's really tangible what it is you have to deliver by when. And if it's not delivered, you've at least done your best.
Yolanda, would you do the same all over again? Or maybe not all over again, but maybe not all over again, but starting from where you are now?
Yeah, we would, absolutely. It has been it was the push, as we said, that was the origin of our company, of our current project. But since the times of Startup, the company that got the Hive, the FET project that became Neuroelectrics, our mission has always been to transform science into technologies with a positive impact in society. And we've done it again. So last year we got an ERC grant, because that's where we start. We start with pure science. And that is the foundation of what we believe will be the next generation of our current technology. So we are going from science, starting with these kind of grants, but we aim at going through the same process of getting it closer and closer to the market by doing the transference into technologies. And so I think that this is something that never stops. Our faith in deep tech, in the need of doing very fundamental and grounded science to become technologies with an impact in society is at our core, at our DNA.
Silvia, what about you?
Yes, I agree. I mean, in my opinion, startups have always the hitting heart in R&D and innovation. So for this reason, Pathfinder always represent an extremely interesting instrument to have the possibility to create a breakthrough that's not incremental research. And if there are these conditions, and if you find a proper consortium with excellent partners, this is of course a great opportunity, and we are working also in this direction.
And please continue to send questions. But just, okay, now the EIC is established, it's successful. I think we have established that as well ever since we started this conference. So what should it look like in the future? What should it do? What doesn't it do yet that it should focus on in the future? Maybe starting with you, Silvia. It's a big crystal ball sort of question.
Well, in my opinion, we have to, I'm working also, and I'm telling also as an EIC ambassador, we should better work together with VC, because in some cases, the EIC itself works with the equity and also with the cooperation with the VC. But as I said before, in many, many cases, the breakthrough technologies need more time and are based on a really high-risk technology. It means that at the beginning, this prototype do not work, they are far to be perfect, and therefore, in many cases, VC are not so comfortable in funding these high-risk ideas, where also the prototype itself doesn't work so well. And since they cannot have the proper skills in specific deep tech, probably they should be more trust in the European Commission and what he's doing, the European Commission and the EIC, in terms of funding of this challenging technology. So probably there is still some dialogue missing in that direction, in my opinion.
Very interesting. What about you, Yolanda? What do you think the EIC should look like in the future to continue being successful?
Yeah, thank you. I subscribe the words of my fellow panelist. It is very important to understand that these deep tech projects like that are very disruptive, might need a longer run before they can be at the stage where they can be self-sustained with their own business model, right? And I think that in Europe we are very successful, and this is in words of Maiques, our CEO, at bringing, making science or transforming money into science, or bringing science. But we are not so good at transforming science back into money. And this is because it takes high-risk investments and long time to make these very innovative, very disruptive technologies to be successful. And this is something that we need to do better in Europe in general at all levels. I think that starting with the mentality, as we mentioned previously, at academia, among the researchers, to understand that this is also a noble and desirable path to go into business. But instruments like the EIC are crucial to make it happen. I think that the Pathfinder is a very well-established program that has been very successful for projects in their early stages. And we're really looking forward to see how well the transition and the accelerator programs work in the future. I think that this is going in the right direction, that having like larger fundings as well, especially the accelerator for projects that are in their scale-up phase. And again, I believe that EIC is leading in this mindset, like to take these higher risks for companies that require like larger investments to make this the next step in their evolution. But this is not enough. Like the private investment is also necessary, and I think that in Europe we are more used to incremental innovation, and we're very good at having this. Innovation in well-established technologies, but as it comes to disruptive technologies, and in particular what is our field, which is deep tech, we need to bring together as well investors, VCs, to believe and make like these riskier investments or larger investments in risky businesses.
Thank you, Itedale. How do you see the future, the successful future of EIC?
No, I of course echo what my panel colleagues said. Venture capitals bringing more exposure to that and investors is important. But something that I think also the EIC can help out with is maybe the outreach and the dissemination. So in every project, there is a dissemination part, there is a presentation portion where we have to go to conferences, we have to create pages about the projects and so on and so forth. But what if there was a portal where all of those innovative projects were collected, and not only in writing where you have an abstract and this is the project with the grant, but you actually have a presentation of the project supported by the EIC. And of course, this would actually have investors and venture capitalists going in, like checking, okay, what is the latest and the greatest? What are the latest innovations being explored and funded today collectively? And I think by that way, it can create a little bit more exposure, because now as it is, there is a lot of responsibility on the project itself to create the videos for awareness or have interviews with the scientists in the project. But I think there's a stronger power behind the EIC, the provider, to bring all of those nice marketing attempts together in a platform.
So yeah, bringing everything together, and that's probably also why it really does make sense to fund research under the EIC, because it's really a whole chain, right?
Yeah.
Silvia?
Yeah, it's true. EIC may appear like really heterogeneous because the TRL scale is really large, starting from the basic research in the Pathfinder up to TRL 9 in the SME accelerator at the end. But it's what happened when you want to bring the basic research and to move on the market with a high impact on the society. So I remember as an example the bionic hand that was born from a Pathfinder more or less 10 years ago. At the beginning it was really a basic research, but now is the state of the art. The exoskeletons, there are many applications also in the clinics. But we had to wait 10 years. So the whole TRL scale funded mostly by the European Commission, and this is important, starting from the basic research.
Yes. Itedale, would you have something to comment about that, the fact that it's really the whole chain that is covered?
No, I really agree that it's very, very important not only to get the help early on or late on. I mean, there are really different aspects and really different types of investments and research questions to be answered in different TRL levels. So I fully echo that. And we see that this is something that has become more so, and grants for pushing us all through the range that TRL are in place.
Yolanda?
Nothing to add. I fully agree.
Very clear. So now I'd like to ask you maybe as a concluding remark, what is if you had to choose, the one biggest benefit of a Pathfinder project? I give you 10 seconds to think about it, and then I start with, maybe I'll start with you, Itedale. One major benefit?
Yeah, I think it helps us to take risks in innovations. That's maybe one. I can mention more, but I think it really allows us to take risks. And if we look at the world, how many of our most important findings came from ideas such as the bionic hand, which no one maybe believed in 15 years ago. Taking risks in innovative ideas, that's definitely...
It allows you to dare, really.
Yeah.
Yolanda, the major benefit?
It's, I think that there are innovations that are gonna happen only because they had the opportunity of having this Pathfinder program, or being part of this Pathfinder program. So I would say that it really is the difference between some advancement existing or not at all, because there are not so many other programs or ways of funding that might make these very risky innovations possible. So I would say that it's not only the possibility to do something risky, but also the difference between something's happening or not, because there are no alternatives. I would say that it's quite unique as well.
So creating opportunities, really. So daring, creating opportunities. What about you, Silvia? What would you see as the key?
Also the networking, the opportunity to work with amazing and outstanding scientists, apart the money for managing the risk, of course.
Yeah, so what we talked about in the beginning, really, this unique opportunity to cooperate between researchers.
Yes.
So there we are. To the EIC organizers, we have three keywords. We have cooperation, we have daring, and we have opportunities. I will use those as the three concluding words of our session. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for joining us. Thank you
Thanks
to our
to
three
you.
speakers, Yolanda, Itedale, Silvia. Thank you. Thanks for being with us. Bye-bye. And have a very nice rest of the afternoon. See you in a few minutes.